Hello, Internet, and welcome once again to the always online multiplayer gaming podcast brought to you by MMOBomb.com, your home for all things multiplayer related. I'm your host, Mike Byrne, aka Magic Man. This is episode 509. We're doing it live Fridays, 1 p.m., twitch.tv/MMOBomb. You can be part of chat, joining us, chiming in with your opinions in real time, chiming in with your weekly bombs when we get there. If you're watching on YouTube, though, or listening on Audible, iTunes, Spotify, any of that good stuff, thank you so much. Give it a like, a subscribe, thumbs up, a good review, turn on those notifications, all the stuff that helps feed the algorithm. But most importantly, on YouTube and on MMOBomb.com, get your weekly bombs and question of the week answers in the comments. You're an important part of the show. Without you, that part of the show goes away. Joining me to talk all kinds of fun MMO and gaming stuff today, Ms. Quinlan Bowers. What's up, Q?
Not a whole lot. You want to see a cool book cover?
Sure.
See if the whole thing fits.
Oh, meet the new boss. What do we have here? Starter Villain by John Scalzi?
Yeah, he and other books he's known for, he did like a kind of a Star Trek related thing called Red Shirts, and another book called the Kaiju Preservation Society.
I think I'm just going to put up the outro now. I don't think the podcast improves after you've seen a cat boss in a suit. I think we're just done for the day. Happy Friday, gang. Talk to you later. Also on the line, probably not holding a book with a cat on the cover, Mr. Troy Blackburn. What's up, Noob Fridge?
I would give anything to have a book with a cat on the cover right now and just prove you wrong. But
oh my God, I literally would have ended the show. I've been like, yeah, it's exactly, Takal. It's 100% all downhill from here if Troy whips out a book with a cat on the cover in any way, shape, or form. I think I'm just retiring. I'm done. We're done doing this stuff. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today, so let's get started with the news. Been having a lot of fun on the last few shows talking about different just MMO broad and multiplayer broad scale topics. Last week, we talked about live services, what makes good ones, who does bad ones. We have all of your feedback below, and man, some of you typed some novels. So we'll get through all of that feedback and hope you'll chime in on this week's question of the week when we get there. So I figured again, there's no huge mega gaming news. It's going to take 15, 20 minutes by itself. We got our usual wrap-up of new upcoming things and some eye scratching. Oh, this is news that makes me scratch my eyes. Head scratching, eye rolling, game news. Not to be confused with eye scratching news. We'll get to all of that later. So I did, Troy, this actually came from, what was that? What was that? Your book cover? Does it meow too? I don't even know what that book's about, but I'm buying it now. If it freaking meows, I'm buying it. This came from, so Troy and I were last night talking, and I said, hey, you know what? I got some space in the show. I've been liking this kind of like general MMO discussion. You got an idea for something that you want to talk about? And he was like, yeah, it was like features in games and stuff like that. So I thought we'd kind of do it like a comparison, right? We've all been here in the MMORPG space since the early days of the genre having, some sort of mass appeal. And there are just certain things that when you look back and then compare to what we have now, we had a whole discussion on our MMORPGs better now than they were. But I wanted to look at like individual pieces. Things that older games did that newer games don't, that you really, really loved and wish they would. And then maybe some things that newer games do or older games did, and you're kind of happy we've evolved away from those types of things. So let's talk features or systems. Obviously, we'll be mentioning some specific games here, I'm sure, that we really like the evolution of, and then maybe some others that were just, I really wish that was still a thing. Troy, give me one of yours.
One of mine that I'm glad that the genre as a whole has sort of evolved into is group finders for sure. I still remember playing World of Warcraft before there was an actual group finder in the game and looking for groups in chat and always looking for more and hoping somebody sees your post and posting in trade and world chat and local and wherever you could post it to try to get a group. So for me, definitely group finder has been a big boon for MMOs. I think that it makes it easier to find a group and meet people if you want to meet people, and if you don't want to meet people, you can just run the group with them, and then sayonara, you're out.
Do you think the group finder comes with the downside of something we've talked about on the show before, right? Where like MMOs these days feel like a big aspect of them feels like a single player game where there just happens to be a lot of other people running around. Like when I look back pre group finder or, you know, matchmaking or whatever for your MMOs, running dungeons, raids and things like that, there's a large aspect of, yeah, it was kind of annoying to have to type in chat and looking for group and get, but that's what encouraged you to join guilds, get to know certain people, or what made the worlds kind of feel alive. There were constantly people talking and looking for something and trying to find something and finding somebody that could make that special, you know, wizard's robe or whatever. With the advent of group finding tools in MMOs, is that kind of to blame for maybe the feeling we also get on the other side where things feel a little less alive than they did in previous years, Q?
Oh, I'm so the wrong person to ask this of because I avoid Group Finder. Like I obviously use Group Finder when absolutely necessary, but most of the time I just avoid doing anything that's like not involving my free company or the guild that I'm in and people that I already know. Like I'm not running around trying to make friends in MMOs. I'm just in there to play the story and that kind of stuff. So I guess I already play MMOs weirdly because I'm just there for the epic story and I don't really care about much else.
And Troy, it's certainly not the sole fault of a group finder type tool, right? We do see a
Yeah.
lot of systems and gameplay and just, you know, the loops in general catering more and more and more to solo players. I mean, hell, we look at MMOs now, and if they have solo and duo dungeons, we're like, yeah, cool. Back in the day, you would have been like, why would I run a dungeon by myself? That's
Yeah.
that's just not what I do. So there's more broad scale issues kind of making MMOs feel smaller or more quote unquote solo friendly. But I think the group finder has a big part in that, right?
Yeah, I think it does have a part in it, but I think you've also you like you said, these games are appealing more to solo players, and they have more solo aspects to them. So you're attracting more people who just want to play solo, regardless. You've got the queues of the world who just want to play by themselves and make their way through the world, and maybe like the fact that other people exist in the world, but doesn't necessarily want to interact with them.
Does that mean like don't play an MMO then? Like that's an argument you see online. It's like, well, Q, if you like doing these things yourself, why the hell are you playing an MMO? Like the defining characteristic of an MMO is something you're not enjoying or don't take part in. Go play something else.
Well, I mean, you know, like there's things that I do, right? Like I'll go do the hunts and stuff like that. And I see people that I recognize. And so it's kind of like cool, like, oh, you know, I see Clue 13. Cool, right? I never actually interact with this person beyond being in maybe the same hunt party. But like I see them and I recognize them and it's cool. And then of course, you know, I have my free company that I do stuff with. Like we, you know, we go and do treasure hunts or we'll get together to run the alliance raids or whatever it is that we're doing as that little group. But I'm just not like out there looking to make more friends. And I mean, there's the caveat that there's like 200 and some odd people in my free company. So there's plenty of people there for me to bother with, even on our slow days.
Yeah, and of course there
Like,
is the argument that an MMO is obviously getting new content. So even if you're just, enjoying the Final Fantasy 14 story, you're going to get an expansion far earlier than you're going to get the next mainline Final Fantasy if that's what you're playing too. So there is that. The group finder, like I wouldn't trade it for the world, by the way. I'm playing devil's advocate here just for the sake of discussion. But yeah, I would not trade group finders for the world. Tazeb in chat, though, saying one problem with group finder is that everyone is quiet throughout the entire dungeon. At least when I joined group finder, sad face.
That's so often very true. You
It
just
is.
kind of get in, you don't really talk to each other, and you kind of get out. But when you do meet cool
The only
people in the
time you
group
talk
finder,
to
it's
each
really
other,
awesome.
the only time you talk to each other is when things are going downhill fast, and then it's just a blame game. Like, is it the healer's fault? Is it the tank's fault? Is it there's not enough DPS? It turns into a blame game. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Q, what's something in older MMOs? Or something that you've seen change in MMOs for the good system-wide, or something in the past that you would like to still be a thing and just isn't?
I don't know that I really think about MMOs that way, or any games that way. It's just for me, a lot of stuff is just of the moment, and I don't really think, oh, I missed this thing because I just don't think about them. I can be like, oh, I miss a particular game, right? But it's not. It's again, so much of it just comes down to the story or the world that they're creating more so than like whatever features the game may have. I don't I it does I can't even remember name features that were in specific games that I played before that I'm not playing now.
Now, chat, by the way, is having an argument over whether people in your party want to hear about what you had for lunch or just kill the damn boss. So, chat is devolving into a group that went on a raid, and things aren't going well right now. They're all doing their thing over there. One thing that so here's this is going to be a very niche audience that agrees with me, I think. One thing that I do look back and like about older MMOs, and like even when I say older MMOs, I'm like including early World of Warcraft, first couple of expansions in that kind of era, is the idea of attunements, like having to accomplish something to gain access to something else. I have the fondest of memories for the Karazhan attunement line in BC, back in Burning Crusade. I don't know why. I thought that was an attunement that was very, very well done. Like, it did take work. It did take some time. Fast forward, we've seen a few games, most notably probably WildStar, try and play with making that still a thing, but they kind of went way over with it. Even World of Warcraft did, like in the Mists of Pandaria era, kind of really screwed up attunements. But when I look back at like older attunements where it was this quest, which required running, a few different dungeons on a certain difficulty to get a few certain items. Yeah, there was a rep grind in there to get a key to get this thing, but they were very objective based, where then fast forward and like it was just like grinding out dailies for a month and a half. But that's not an attunement to me. I like the old school attunements. That said, I'd love to see them in MMOs, but I don't know how much time I'd actually put into them personally these days. So there's definitely some like rose-tinted nostalgia goggles going on for me there, no doubt, and I'll readily admit that. But I did like that type of stuff. I'm one of those older school MMO players too that feels like it's okay for things to be out of my reach in an MMO, whether that's because I don't have the skill to do the required task, or whether that's because the required task is just not interesting to me and I don't like doing it. And so I'm not going to do it. I like the idea of seeing Troy run by with that, special sparkly mount. And I'm like, I know how he got that. Oh, that's really cool. And maybe even send him a message, hey, cool, nice mount. Knowing that I'll never have it. That's not the era we live in anymore at all.
Yeah.
Where there's such a desire, Troy, for that instant gratification hit. And hey, I'm paying a sub or I'm spending money in the cash shop or whatever. So give me that instant gratification hit, or I'm going to go spend this money elsewhere. And so developers now cater towards, okay, we have a special mount. Here's 9 different ways to get it so that basically everybody can obtain it at some point. I kind of like that, think back on you knew that person that had what Thunder Fury, right? Like you knew the person on your server that had that, even though you had never interacted with them at all. You don't have kind of like that magic feeling today.
Yeah, and things like I love cosmetic systems. Like I play Lotro pretty much primarily nowadays, and I love the cosmetic system in that. But I do miss back in World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King something very similar, where you could tell what I'd done just by the gear I was walking around in, and
Yeah.
you could instantly recognize the gear that I had on, and tell exactly where I've been and what I've done, and some of the hardcore accomplishments that I had finished, and some of the raids that I had beaten before a lot of other folks had beaten. And I do miss that a little bit. That being said, my character without cosmetics looks like a hot mess. So thank you for cosmetics.
Well, and so World of Warcraft in particular still does this to a little bit of an extent, and I'm glad that they do in like their ahead of the curve achievements, right? When you beat the raids on the varying degrees of difficulty, while it is still the most current raid content and typically like the rewards amount or something like that. And then after, the next raid series releases, the ahead of the curve achievements are no longer available. I like that type of stuff. And I know that turns off a lot of people, Q, because then you start getting into that like fear of missing out, right? If I wasn't playing the game actively at the time that was a current raid, then I'm just not going to get that thing. Therefore, I have to be playing this, and that causes a bad feeling towards your subscription too. So I kind of get both sides of this, but I'm totally okay with, you know what? I'm just never going to have that mount unless they re-release it for something, and I don't really think that they should.
Or put it in
Yeah.
the cash shop is what they like to do nowadays.
Right.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. Like there's stuff that I don't do, right. Like I'm not out there doing savages and ultimates and stuff like that. I have a friend who keeps trying to tell me he'll drag me through an ultimate. And I'm just like, no, I don't need that in my life. But
I got a
like,
book with a cat. You think I care about ultimates?
he's like, don't you want this shiny weapon? And I'm like, not really, no, because then I have the thing of, oh, this person has a shiny weapon, let me go check their stats, and I don't need all of that jazz in my life. Like I just don't want to deal with it. So I mean, yeah, there's mounts or weapons or whatever that I'm obviously not getting because I'm not doing this content. And although with the savages, right, you can wait like a couple of expansions and eventually get the mount.
Yes.
But I don't worry about it. Like there's plenty of other things for me to get. I can go grind the relic tools for crafting or something. Like it's fine.
Yeah, chat kind of chiming in with some of them with the other point that I gave there to Cal, saying I'm 100% okay with things being skill limited, and probably I would assume you mean also desire limited, like I just don't want to go do X activity, but never time limited. Tori the Chicken saying, I despise timed legacy items. Using fear of missing out to make me play the game makes me really uncomfortable. And then to Cal saying, if I start the game 10 years after launch, I should be able to get that old shiny thing. And to Cal and I have talked about this before offline. We're friends, but we 100% just disagree on this thing, on this particular aspect. And we've had this conversation before. Does it kind of suck that like, oh, that really cool thing doesn't exist anymore and you can't get it because you just started playing the game and it's 10 years old? Yeah, I understand that feels bad, but I also look at that and goes, oh man, that's really cool. I wonder what one is going to be here for me now that people joining 10 years from now aren't going to be able to have, and I'll have that one. I'm kind of a lot more lenient on this. I understand for the world we live in, that's not the MMO's design space as a whole anymore. I get it. You win. You won. I just don't agree. I don't like it. I don't like it. Troy, what else you got? Something you like or something you hate?
Something I miss is more flexibility in builds and the way you create your character, and more character identity. Like my character really does this more than a lot of other folks. And a lot of this is our own fault as players, because we're looking for that 0.01% maximum of whatever we do. So, it's always cookie cutter builds, and games have sort of catered to that now. where everything is set up to be more cookie cutter builds, and there's less options and there's less choice and there's less freedom in how you create and what you do out in the world, and how you go about your business. And I sort of miss that in older MMOs where, I could be way different than another Death Knight or another, archer of a similar type. So unfortunately, the games themselves have catered to that, but I think that's sort of a symptom of our own creation there.
We see that a lot, Q, in Final Fantasy 14, right? That's one that gets brought up a lot, that the classes, while obviously varied in rotation and look and design, there is a certain feeling of the classes being a bit more homogenous than other MMOs, because by design, Yoshi P does not want, and team does not want that, well, hey, this raid series, you really, really want a red mage in your party. Or in this raid series, you really would never, ever bring a bard, and forcing kind of like that very specific party composition where Troy, your mage, you've been Frost forever, but Frost sucks this raid series. You need to go Arcane, like, to stay away from that stuff. And I agree, it does kind of feel lessened a little bit. I get it, right? I don't want to main a red mage and then all of a sudden I'm totally asked out from being a viable class in the current raid series. I get that, but I feel like there's got to be a way to make one class feel so dramatically different from the other while still maintaining most of that balance. Yeah, you start getting into like the meta discussion. What's the best version of your class at any given time? And maybe that's not your cup of tea. What do you think, though, Q?
And it's interesting that you mentioned like the getting frozen, because I did know, like, at least listening to the raiders that I know talk, they will be like, oh, well, there's no point in playing this class for raiding right now.
Yeah,
Right?
it still happens anyway.
We still have a little bit of that going on, where it'll be or they'll be like, or people don't want to party with it, or whatever. And it's, obviously in the less serious content, it's not a big deal. You can go in with 4 dancers as your DPS and it's whatever. Right? Like there's not necessarily a problem. But with the rest of the stuff, like I do know there are raid groups that are pretty strict about what you allow. So I don't think it's really fixed it necessarily. I mean, if we're talking about like dealing with classes, and I think probably my favorite class situation of any MMO was like, would be something like in Secret World, where you just kind of threw stuff together to make your thing the way you wanted it to play. Although, with Secret World, it limited you to like 7 skills.
Yeah.
to use, which was
you
also
don't have the
kind of
old
nice, 'cause you
5
didn't
hot
have button
bars.
bloat. Like, yeah, you didn't, like, your hot bars were just going like this. Right, there were 7 skills. You had like hundreds to choose from, but there were 7 on your bar, and that's what you used. So you had to be, particular about building it out and figuring out how you wanted your particular class to play. And I did enjoy that. But at the same time, like, there wasn't, raiding and stuff wasn't really a big deal in that game. We had raids, which were just basically like these massive things that everybody dumped into at once and did something, and then, it didn't really matter the comp,
Right.
because what counted as a raid had more characters in it than an alliance raid in XIV. Like, it was just everybody who happened to be on, in the area, dumping into the tree or whatever to fight something, and then it's dead and you're done. So
speaking of the kind of like that customization stuff, one thing that I don't really like in current MMOs is there seems to be a tendency to try and give you that illusion, Troy, of you having some customizable stuff to do. And I saw FF14's old skill points mentioned in chat by somebody, and that's kind of a great example of what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, you could take those skill points and allocate them any way you wanted in a couple based off of like 6 different stats or whatever at the time, and kind of modify the things to your liking. But ultimately, that was an empty system, right? It just turned into, oh, well, I'm a tank. I'm just going to drop these all. So whatever gives me the most HP, right? I'm going to just drop these all because I'm a mage into whatever gives me the most mana. There's a difference to me between what is the optimal build when you have that kind of flexibility versus there is literally no reason for you to put these points anywhere else but here, no matter what task you are doing. Like, you don't put them here for a raider and here for an open world and here for a dungeoneer and here for a PvP. It's just like, you dump them here. That's it. There's no reason. I kind of hate that we do see a lot of those kind of faux customizable systems in MMOs a little more these days because they want to appeal to you, giving you the ability to customize while not sacrificing on, your ultimate viability. I feel like MMOs are really, really good when there are builds that you could just totally jank up and go, wow, I'm fucking useless. I need to do a little research about my class. And you just generally don't have that anymore.
And there are other ways to do things that can be really fun sometimes in skill trees, but yeah, it's all about the optimization nowadays. Even in Lord of the Rings Online, you kind of got the same thing that you were just talking about. You've got old school skill trees with skill points that you put in, and you can build your character. But at the same time, there's always those nodes where you're just like, why would I ever put points into this? Like, this is so useless.
Yeah, Tori the Chicken in chat bringing up Guild Wars 2 and hero points, where very early it does kind of matter a little bit just on picking up those first few abilities and stuff for your first through few levels. But then after that, you're going to end up getting them all if you really, really want to anyway. So it doesn't matter. You just get them in the order you want them is the customizability, not getting what you want and being limited to what you want. Yeah, you're just going to go get it anyway. And I feel like maybe that's my one big, we haven't moved I agree, we've moved in the right direction with things like Group Finder and various things like that. I feel like one of the big areas where we kind of maybe aren't moving in the right direction in MMOs is that, and this is going to be very broad, that innovation, right? When you look back, EverQuest into World of Warcraft, into EverQuest 2 at that time, those were 3 dramatically different games. All MMORPGs, but very dramatically different. Then FF11 hits that bucket. Very dramatically different. All of these MMOs trying very, very different paths to obviously varying degrees of success. And a bit of certainly a different market, right? There's the whole novelty of the MMO in that era too, where if you fast forward now, it's really just like which MMO gives you the best amalgamation of the features you like. Not this is doing something so wildly different and new and unique and interesting that you really want to try it, but you're drawn to New World, Troy. And I would argue that New World doesn't do a damn thing new when it comes to being an MMORPG on the market. It just happens to have for you the best collection of the MMO features that exist already in other games in one place that you enjoy. In a package you enjoy watching visually. And so that works for you. But I don't think it's fair to say that New World, I don't think it's unfair to say that New World doesn't reinvent anything on the MMO front. And maybe that's kind of what causes this continued stagnation of just game hopping.
Yeah, because they're like you said, they're all so similar nowadays. It's just a matter of which one brings together, just like you said, everything that I like the most, and that one brings together a great gathering system. New World brings together a great crafting system and combat that I happen to enjoy. And so it comes together into a game that I really like. It definitely doesn't reinvent the wheel in really any aspect. I know some folks who haven't played a lot of MMOs might say that, well, the be able to gather anything out in the world, basically that you run across is probably innovative a little bit, but there are other games still doing that. There are other games that have done that in the past. and there are other games coming in the future who are looking to do that again. You look at something like Dune Awakening, whether or not it's going to be a real MMO, I've got my doubts, but it's going to have that sort of survival crafting sort of aspect to it as well, and it's maybe not innovating the MMO genre as much as it's just bringing in more of the survival crafting genre into the MMO space.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, Q. Like, obviously, a big portion of that is it's expensive to take risks, right? It is absolutely, in some cases, cripplingly expensive to take a risk and not have it pan out. It could shut down your studio. We've seen well-funded big studios lose it because they took a big risk and it didn't pan out. Now, we could argue about what caused it to not pan out. It wasn't the risk itself, it was the execution of those things. But it is expensive to take a risk. And so there is a certain balance to everything when these companies are, okay, let's take the features from World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy and New World and this game that are working really well, and let's push them all together. It's why I still have huge question marks over Ghostcrawler's project, right? That project sounds very, very different in the MMO space than things we have seen in a long time. I want that to pan out, but it is a huge risk.
I mean, it's the thing. It's not like MMOs and video games are the only place this happens.
No,
right?
oh, no, not at all.
We've been living with the Marvel universe for a very, very long time. And it originally was something that was completely new and could have completely failed because, comic book movies did fail quite often. And once they figured out the formula, they were like, we're just going to do this. And they've been doing it mostly ever since. And every time they deviate a little bit, it causes some problems, basically. So, we're not necessarily, that's not to say that there aren't other new things, right? Like happening in the film or, movie industry or whatever, right? Like coming out with shows like Only Murders in the Building or something, which is, very much different. Or, like there's been that kind of thing of musical series and stuff like that that's suddenly, getting more popular. But still, the big things, once they figure out exactly what works, they just stick with it. And it's the same case in video game industry. Like, it's just, this is what works. If we deviate from it, because people will be like, oh, I want this, I want that, I want whatever. And then when they get it, they're like, that's no, but not like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So why bother to try the I want this, I want that things when there's a chance that they're going to be, but no, not that way. I didn't ask for it that way. So I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying, like, it's just a thing that exists, and part of the problem is on our end, in that people don't seem to like new things as much as they think they might like new things.
Either of you got any other ones before we move on that you had on your list you want to throw out there?
No, I think that was it for me.
Q?
Honestly, I think the only thing that, like, out of stuff that I potentially missed was like an Ion, when I would do the gathering and then just go find some place and sit out there and, sell whatever I gathered or made to people as they were going into dungeons. Like that's
The old bizarre features, right?
Right, but I understand why that has been eliminated, because there was such a spam problem and stuff like that associated with it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it sucks, because it was cool to just go out there and sit next to the dungeon or next to some dangerous area. It's just slightly out of the danger, and be like, oh, you forgot to buy stuff in town? Don't worry, I've got it.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 11, I remember, like, any exit you took from Juno into the field maps around Juno, like the first hallway going into the zone was always just filled with people that were online but totally not at their computer with their bizarre flags up above them. You just, like, walked through this sea of people. It was neat to see. I also miss the days, by the way, of, like, not every character could do everything. And so, like, there was the best blacksmith on your server, right? Who had that special pattern for whatever. I do kind of miss those days too. Anyway, let us know. That's going to be our question of the week when we get down to it. What did previous MMOs do really, really well that you wish they still did? Or what do we do now that is a vast improvement over the days of old folks like us that you're glad to see have changed? Let's talk about some games that are, and some updates that are coming soon. Troy, I immediately thought of you when I assigned this article to you, because I was like, oh yeah, that's still a thing. That's still a thing. Midnight Ghost Hunt is finally actually releasing after being in early access for 2 years. 2 years. Okay, early access can be long. That's fine. But it's like a hide and seek asymmetric game. Like, I would not have expected early access for this to be 2 years long.
Yeah, it was very extended for what is essentially like a prop hunt type game, and when you sent it to me, I was
like, you did
surprised.
a first look over like so long ago.
Yeah, it's like I barely remember it, but I do remember doing the first look because I remember playing the game and playing the hide and seek aspects of it, and I remember enjoying the game.
Yeah, you liked it.
But then it's like early access. You know, you always want to step away a little bit and let them kind of come with more and see what the polished and the end version's going to be. And then 2 years later, you kind of forget about it, and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, this game. Oh well, like, I'm glad that it's finally launching. Maybe 2 years later, I'll try it again. Maybe 2 years later, I've completely lost interest in it. We'll just have to wait and see.
If you're looking for it, it'll be available on March 21st. It's finally leaving early access. Then 10 maps revealed for everything, new weapon skins, new bot AI difficulty levels, profile pics, ghost visuals, hunter weapon effects, van design. Like, there's a lot. It's $20 on Steam if you want to pick it up on March 21st. You can check out the first look on MMOBomb.com. Troy, you were generally pretty positive about it with a few caveats because it was early access, like early access for them at the time. But yeah, if you like those types of asymmetric gameplay, hide and seek type things, kind of Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed is kind of the idea here, right? You're hunting, the ghost is trying to possess the people, and the people are trying to catch the ghost or kill the ghost. And the ghost can hide and stuff. So yeah, very similar to Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed in that vein of gameplay. On the other side of things, you had mentioned it earlier, we've got Dune Awakening finally starting to spill a bit. We've got a couple different videos. Right now I'm showing you the gameplay trailer, which, yeah, I guess technically is gameplay at some key points. But yeah, there's no like HUD or any real detail. You see some dude mining a couple of things with his laser gun. It is more like cinematic than a gameplay trailer, but they're calling it the Survive Arrakis trailer, kind of showing you some of the dangers and some of the building that you'll be doing, some of the vehicles. There's also a behind-the-scenes video that is available on MMOBomb.com as well, where they kind of go into the making of, right? How something goes from a book to a movie to now a video game. I am not generally on the survival train, but I am totally on the Dune movie and book train. So I definitely will be checking this one out, Q. And it does look like it could be interesting, even though, could I please just not have somebody farming crafting materials with a goddamn laser gun anymore? That has been done so many times. All right, you got ore. Fantastic. Do something different. Something different. It's a sci-fi thing. Do anything you want, and it would have been fine. But sure, let's shoot lasers at rocks and farm the rocks. Anyway, survival open world MMO. I'm kind of looking forward to this one, but maybe not as much as some of you others on the panel. What do you think, Hugh?
Nah.
Not for you at all. That was very quick. Do you want to
that was.
think about it for another minute?
Hmm.
And see if I'm showing the trailer here. You can feel free, take a few minutes to decide.
Nah.
Still a no. Okay. Troy, you've already expressed that you're kind of anxiously looking forward to this one.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to this one. I've got some friends who messaged in Discord the other day asking about this game and if I'd heard anything new on it, and I was like, no, not at the time. And then, of course, a day or two later, they start dropping some more info on it. But I've got buddies who are definitely looking forward to playing this. I'm interested in checking it out for sure. I'm curious. They keep tagging it as an MMO.
Yeah.
I keep seeing survival crafting with a sort of Planet Side 2 type of end game. So whether or not it's going to be true MMO is questionable for me for sure. But survival crafting, I'm still interested in checking that out.
Tori the Chicken saying, not a fan of survival, never watched or read Dune, still hoping this will be good. And Takao saying, yeah, same, never read or watched either, but would seem cool for an actual MMO. Yeah, I mean, it is a world that there is plenty of world creation. Like, you just go to the books and you're like, oh, okay, well, Tolkien gave us all these books. Let's make Lotro the MMO. The worlds of Dune absolutely have that type of world building already done in the books. So could be good. Yes, I am curious. They do keep, it's not us putting the MMO title on this. I mean, you see it in the trailer here at the tail end. They keep advertising it as such, but to what degree, we'll have to wait to find out. Troy, you want to make your sad face now? Here, I'll just give you your sad face. There you go. What's going on in New World?
Tears of sadness. Season of the Guardian is delayed. They responded to a lot of player feedback, and they've good on them for reacting to it. But we've got an update with no actual content that has been delayed past the original launch date. And so they're now re-implementing changes to artifacts and the Slayer script, new sort of animation combat animation system that they're implementing. They've received a lot of feedback that it's not ready for prime time yet. So instead of delaying that feature, they're just delaying the whole season of the Guardian update.
So controller support has to wait, all that other fun stuff. Do we know when? It was originally April 12th? So like a month away, wasn't it? Something like that. Or April 2nd?
Yeah, something
or like early April-ish, I think.
Yeah, I don't even remember now, but yeah, it was coming up here pretty quick. Now they're not giving a date for it.
Well, there you go. An indefinite
delay. A lot of folks
delay.
are upset because they're not giving any sort of date whatsoever now.
An indefinite delay. Do you think the layoffs are affecting that? No, I at least I don't. I think it's more Slayer script. I have a feeling that like if Slayer script is something that if they implement it poorly, could literally kill the game.
Yes.
It would have such a turnoff to the already smaller than expected long-term player base for the MMO that I think it could really do some serious damage. If it janked things up real nice. And we're talking about an MMO, Troy, that I know you love them, but they are not, they don't have the best track record when it comes to implementing new features or patches or content or avoiding dupes or avoiding exploits or bugs or squashing those bugs and exploits without putting in other exploits without which require them to shut down their entire economy for days at a time. Not exactly the best track record. I'm just saying.
And then not exactly the best track record for fast fixes on that stuff either.
Yeah, this is probably the better option, although it does have obviously bad optics when you have to delay it to an unknown date. Final Fantasy XIV's got a little bit of news, Q, so why don't you catch us up on some Xbox stuff and some 14-hour live stream stuff and other stuffs?
I mean, the one is pretty simple. They gave us a launch date for Xbox, so it will officially launch. Actually, it's not that far off. March 21st on the XS, and when it launches, there will be Game Pass Ultimate perks that are a limited time thing that lasts through April 19th. And, open beta is available now, so people can actually just get in there and start playing now if they want to and do their stuff.
Yeah, if you're a brand new player.
Yeah, I think they still probably don't want the rest of us like doing the whole thing until after.
Yep.
Launch. So, if you want to move to Xbox for some reason. So the 14-hour stream, we don't know a lot about it yet, but they're having, God, what day was that on? I wrote it. No, I already forgot. And that was just a while ago. Well, my brain switched to
it
doing
moved.
the Fortnite
It moved on to
stuff.
podcast mode. April 12th.
Right. Okay. So yeah, April 12th is the 14-hour live stream. They haven't said what all is going to be happening in it, but if you've seen any of the previous ones, you can probably be like, oh, there'll be a live letter, and they'll do some sort of quiz show or Q&A session and stuff like that. The normal stuff they do while Yoshi P avoids sleeping.
Probably get a look at the collector's set too, I would imagine.
Yeah, stuff like that. And I meant it because at this point, the only two options for them to give us the launch date for Dawn Trail, if they're going to give it to us, during doing something, is either during that or the PAX East thing that they're doing. But that's more of a, if I understood correctly, that's more of a retrospective kind of, the history of or whatever kind of panel they're planning on doing at PAX. So best guess, Dawn Trail launch date will come out during the 14-hour stream.
Oh, and don't feel cheated or anything, but they're going to go ahead and cram 2 events together into one. So, yay.
Oh, yeah.
Hatching Tide and Little Ladies is becoming one event for this year.
That would be less annoying if you still got a reward for each.
Yep.
But you do not. There's only one reward. And there's not even the, you can go buy some of the rewards from the event vendor. At least none that they listed, and they usually do. So this time it's just the pink Goo Boo mount.
So there you go.
And it literally is just a pink Goo Boo mount.
Yep. Little underwhelming. We talked about that quite a bit yesterday on the podcast. A couple other news hits. This is the eyeball scratching news I had mentioned earlier on a lot of fronts. So Epic and Apple, they're at it again because remember, after some court settlements overseas, Europe was going to make Apple do some certain respecting of different digital acts over there. And so Epic was looking forward to getting back on iOS platforms over there. And then all of a sudden, they said, hey, wait a minute, where's our developer's account? And Apple just went ahead and shut that thing off. Basically saying that Tim Sweeney was mean on Twitter. I mean, they said it a lot nicer than that and more legalese than that. But it basically boiled down to Tim Sweeney was a big meanie face on Twitter, and we didn't like that. So Epic says, this is a serious violation of the DMA and shows Apple has no intention of allowing true competition on iOS devices. If they don't like what's going on, they're just kicking people from the marketplace at their own discretion to avoid having to abide by the DMA requirements put on Apple in Europe. Apple says, the Epic breached contractual obligations and led courts to determine that Apple has the right to determine any or all of Epic Games' wholly owned subsidiaries, blah, 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 being on our platform. And we exercised that right and booted them from the platform. This isn't going to be the last we hear of this. There is an update. EU regulators did talk to Reuters, and they have requested more information from Apple on why they took this action, and are also evaluating whether Apple's actions raise doubts on their compliance with the DSA and the P2B platform, given the links between the developer program membership and the App Store as a designated very large online platform. So mom and dad, back at it, fighting downstairs while we're just trying to go to bed, Troy.
I get there are regulations in place, both in the U.S. and EU now, that are meant to address some of these situations. But an unpopular opinion, here we go. I still side with Apple a little bit. It's my platform. I made it popular. I've got the distribution. If you're going to trash talk me, I'm going to kick you off my platform.
This is so. Oh. Star Wars Battlefront Classic, although we're very happy is a thing, the Classic Collection, there's a little bit of potential sad news coming from Reddit user It's Maverick 1357 that they sent a ticket asking about cross-platform multiplayer because it's going to support like up to 64 players and do like all that cool stuff. But no, it won't. They replied saying the Classic Collection will not feature cross-platform multiplayer. Cross-generation will be supported. So, like, you can play on the PS4 with PS5 players. They can play multiplayer together, but you couldn't join Xbox players, etc. Apologize for the inconvenience. We're more than happy to log your request as feedback. Player feedback is reviewed regularly by our team to help make our games better. That's a little sad, Q. I think that's just a missed opportunity to suck up some more sales. Ultimately, I don't think it's gonna like kill anything, but I do count it as a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I could see where, people will feel that way, but I'm looking at, right, it's Aspire that's doing it.
Yeah.
And Aspire's not really right. Aspire is basically known for converting things, not making big things. So maybe they just don't have the ability to do cross-platform or something. Or it could be, I don't know, like there's something with the licensing or whatever, and they would have to put it through. But
Or maybe it just costs money.
I mean, yeah, but Aspire is not incredibly big. Literally, Aspire has always just been known for like converting EA's things to other things. Like,
yeah,
right? Like you wanted to play American McGee's Alice on the Macintosh, it would end up being an Aspire game. Like that kind of thing. That's what they've always done. They're not like the biggest money people. They just convert games so they can be played on other things.
Hey, a little update to our kind of key topic yesterday or last week. We used like the Warner Brothers live service Suicide Squad versus Hogwarts thing to kind of start the discussion about live services on last week's show. This week, Warner Brothers, in news shocking nobody at all, decided to double down and are going to expand on their free-to-play and live service titles. Now, this was something we reported on a couple of months ago when they did their financial presentations, that this was going to be their focus. It would have been interesting to see, like, if their sadness over how Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is doing compared to Hogwarts, a single-player game last year that was the best-selling game of the year, and Warner Brothers being surprised that they're not coming close to those sales. You would think maybe that would cause a little hesitation to dive deeper into the free-to-play or live service models. And then Sony wanting to do 12 of them by 2025, coming back off of that. We're seeing like a lot of peel back from live services. But no, Warner Brothers says, let's go. Let's go, baby. Because they still think their biggest franchise benefit the most by being largely console and PC-based, free-to-play extensions with the goal to have more players spending more time and more money on more platforms versus single-player games, despite Hogwarts selling gangbusters.
Well, I can't wait to see them proven wrong over and over and over again.
Look, it's not like Warner is ever really known for doing the smart thing. Like, they're just always known for making very gross decisions about most of their stuff. So, like, there's no point in being surprised by any of this.
I'm not sure what you're saying, Takao. It's a dumb comparison if that's what you are comparing Hogwarts to.
Yeah, Hogwarts to.
Yeah, we said that last week. We're like,
League.
why would you even compare these? Like, you knew you were going to be financially down compared to Hogwarts, no matter what it was. Like, no matter what it was, it just happened to be Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. But it didn't matter. You were going to be down. You were going to be down. You think they should focus on free-to-play live service games? Why? They're free-to-play. I would agree with you if their free-to-play live service games did well, totally independent of the comparison to Hogwarts, which was an absurd comparison for them to even mention in their financial argument. We agree there, 100%. But their live service games don't do well. That's my beef with it. It's like if you had products that were doing really well in that space and you said, hey, we're going to sink more money into that space, that makes total sense. But their live service games don't do well. So that's where you kind of lose me on Warner Brothers diving in a little more on that front. Yeah, the game that never was. We have seen games, Troy, not make it out of like a open beta or a closed beta or early access even. We've seen games close in early access. This is, I think, the first time I have ever seen a game release a limited time demo as part of an event, in this case Steam Next Fest, and then decide, we're done. We're done. And Q, I am glad that you quoted significant portions in this article because you were correct in your article. The link to the Steam game page where this announcement was made is no longer available.
I kind of, I had a feeling.
They said that based on the demo and feedback, significant improvements were needed to achieve the level of quality and enjoyment they envisioned. Because of this, we're going to fix it. No. Because of this, they decided to permanently close the project rather than continue development. But we're excited to explore new opportunities to deliver more engaging stuff in the future.
Off of a demo.
You were actually kind of interested in this one, Troy.
A limited time demonstration. Games, I swear.
You know what this almost feels like?
They have to make money in freaking pre-alpha nowadays to even have a chance.
So what this almost feels like to me is almost like Warner deciding not to release Wile E. Coyote versus Acme so they could just put it back in a vault and get a tax break off of it.
There's something I wanted to find here for you. I kind of see your point now. You're saying because single player games won't either, if it's not Harry Potter or Batman, better go with live services. You have as a higher ceiling. Again, I would agree, but Warner Brothers, generally speaking, but Warner Brothers is specifically talking about very specific IPs. And they are the ones you're talking about. Mortal Kombat, Game of Thrones, DC, and Harry Potter. So you kind of lose the argument of they wouldn't be popular single-player games if they weren't in an IP like this when they specifically talk about those being the 4 IPs. Those being the ones that they have to do. So it's very weird. Very weird. Wakerunners, goodbye. Goodbye. Also hitting maintenance mode basically is Temtem. After much internet debate about missing MMO features and what is an MMO and what isn't when it comes to Temtem, the developers just said, hey, you know what? We're done. And they're going to put this last little content update, and then there will be some like balancing and tweaking and bug fixing patches, maintenance mode type stuff. But patch 1.7 will mark the end of content development for Temtem, and the crew at Crema will move on to other projects. So sorry if you are a Temtem fan, you ain't getting like the big MMO portion of stuff that you thought you were, which is kind of pissing people off, understandably. Let's do the weekly bombs. Go for it, Troy.
I'm going to give a dub bomb to Dune Awakening for bringing interest of a lot of my friends back together into one place. We're kind of spread out right now and not really playing together a whole lot. So it sounds like Dune Awakening may be the game that brings us back together, at least for a little while.
Go ahead, Q.
I'm going to give an A-bomb to Kira Toriyama passing away.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. I'm not a huge Dragon Ball person, but obviously I'm a huge Dragon Quest and Dragon Warrior and Chrono Trigger and Blue Dragon and fan. And
Dragon Ball was my soap opera back in the day.
Very life-changing IP there for a lot of people. Very sad, and condolences to family and friends. I'm going to give a dub bomb to the way Elder Scrolls does its previews for dungeons and lore reveals. I really, really dig it. But I got to give them an A-bomb to their updated roadmap they put out this week, which when I assigned to Troy, I was like, hey, please go back to our other piece a couple of months ago on what this roadmap looked like and make sure you're comparing and contrasting and stuff. And when I read Troy's piece, as proofreading it, I was like, huh. Yeah, there is nothing new on here at all. There's a couple like tweaks and changes to some smaller things and dates, but it's basically like leading all the way up to the expansion and then a blank square for after the expansion. So
yeah,
why even tweet it out as an update at that point?
Which is the thing you would have thought that they would have included in their updated roadmap was what's at least a brief outline of what's coming after the expansion.
Yeah. From chat, Tozib says, dub bomb to Capcom for releasing a Dragon's Dogma 2 character creator prior to launching the game. I always like when companies do that. Takao has one on YouTube, which I have here queued up first, so I'll just add this. Takao giving a dub bomb to Akira Toriyama. I wasn't a fan of his work, but the people who make the manga that I do like were, and that's good enough for me. That's a hell of a point. Inspiring so many other works. Takao also says, A-bomb to the game devs complaining about having to go back into the office. And I know I kind of talked about this briefly at the end of the last show. 5 days a week. Saw an article where Rockstar devs called the change a reckless decision, and another article saying that such a move would result in worse games. Do these morons think that the video game industry was invented in 2020? Look up any constantly regurgitated best of games, best of all-time games list, and the vast majority of those were made long before work from home was a thing. Look, I get it. You want to be able to play Dota while on the clock, but history has proven that employees being in the office daily does not result in bad games, unless we're calling Super Smash Bros., Ocarina of Time, Halo 2, Half-Life, Final Fantasy 7, Mass Effect 2, bad games. Y'all can miss me with that bullshit take. All right, so I disagree with you on being averse to going back into the office after having worked remotely. I think that's totally fine. Where you and I don't see, I 100% agree with you. The argument that forcing us all back into the office makes a bad game is absurd. It's just as absurd as the counter argument of forcing everybody back into the office makes better games that the companies make too. They're both absurd arguments. Go ahead, Troy.
TST9UE. Spend money only to test the game? Wow.
Yeah, good old early access and Founders Pack beta test. That's the world we live in, boys and girls. BW Flaw or B Flaw 85 in chat saying to bomb to MMOBomb for being awesome. Hey, thank you so much. Tori the chicken says, I was talking about Dragon Ball. Okay, cool. Question of the week last week. What's the best multiplayer live service game out there and why? How can the genre be shaken up? And I added in during the show who does it very, very poorly. Someone else wrote a love letter it's not full of a lot of love. But here we go. Someone else. Live service isn't the issue with gaming. It's how the game tries to make money. Originally, regardless of if it was a game provided as a product or a service of some nature, people only paid to gain access to the game. Now, when things work this way, the basic idea is for the developer to make the best game they can, so people want to spend money to gain the access. Although eventually, microtransaction-based models came in, and with that standard way of things working, is that the microtransactions are things that are removed from the game, so they can sell them back to players willing to make their experience better. Put another way, they purposely make a bad game, just not a total shit game, because if they make it shit, even those willing to spend money to improve their experience will quit. Now, not all microtransaction-based models need to work out that way I described. It's just that most do work that way. Although even if it starts out reasonably well with the model as is, it becomes easy enough to take something that was handled reasonably well and make it terrible. Good example, Star Conflict, not to be confused with Star Citizen. It used to be pretty fair, but over time it got worse and worse until I quit and I just never went back. Right around the time I quit, they increased the volume of one of the resources required to make an in-demand new class of ship at the time by some 2 to 5 times what they were, without increasing the in-game ways of gaining it. But what they did do was add that resource to the cash shop. When it comes down to it, the company, of course, needs to make money. They just need to accept that they likely will not be making massive amounts of money. Then focus on making a good game and make money only be selling access. If it's good, some people will always be willing to play and pay. Then while having some group content isn't a bad thing, making a game based on difficult group content only doesn't work. Blade and Soul as well as Lost Ark are good examples of that. The fact of the matter is most playing games just want to just play and not have to worry about dealing with the bulk of the community more than they need to. So the more dependent play is that on that community, the more niche the game will be. There can be a big group content like show up and bash on a big boss for a while, but if it's made to be too punishing, most people won't want to put up with that for too long. Also, the game doesn't need to be some consuming play 24/7 game. Most don't want that, but if you provide a good experience at a fair price, people will be more willing to keep paying to maintain access. So you bring up a ton of points there. Some of them I agree with, and some of them I think we could have an interesting discussion about if we have more time. The one that I will kind of pull out from there is these games get caught in a loop, right? You're not wrong about any of the way that stuff works at all, but these games get caught in a loop. So what happens is they do make a ton of money, but then that money slowly starts to peter off and plateau, right? And because most of these are publicly available or traded companies, there's that desire to push that number back up. And the easiest way to push that number back up is to offer more things to sell, which pisses off the people that are still there. And so your player base goes down, but you still have to make year-over-year revenues, so you start selling more and more aggressive or high-costed items to the smaller audience that you have, and now you're in a death spiral. You're absolutely right on most of your points, and it's self-inflicted because the one huge great point you made that shows that is if you were happy with making a ton of money and not all of the money, you'd probably be pretty okay. Go ahead, Q.
Trinshad, hands down, the worst of the live service games out there has to be EA's FIFA series. I'm not a customer myself, but the sheer amount of news headlines that came from their more recent games painted a pretty grim picture. Box price, microtransactions, and a yearly rinse and repeat. That is a hard pass for me. Games that do it right, in my opinion, are Warframe and Smite. Both of those games offer the means to earn trade premium currency for free, as well as handouts on the regular. Don't get me wrong, both games know how to feed the whales. However, it's the resourceful minnows that get the most out of the game with spending so little or nothing.
Yeah, I mean, both of those are exact great examples, I think, of how to do it right. I think any game that gives you the opportunity to earn the cash shop currency, if you're going to have one in game, are on the right track. It's just a balancing game from there, giving it away versus selling it. What do you need to sell to make your bills and make your profits versus how much you can give away? You're on the right track when you start thinking about doing it, though. Go ahead, Troy.
Flintstone says, top point, Troy. They are not putting gameplay first. I'm so glad as PC gamer I lived through those great true beta days and was able to play most, if not all of them. Some brilliant gaming times. I think it was the way because it was all new and basically pretty free. Now, I blame the mobile. Mobile industry is the worst of its kind. They ruined gaming by their use of user ignorance of their own privacy and stupidity to click and pay all day. Mobile is the true ruin of gaming that has made PC gaming fall down this bag. An alliance has been formed upon the PC scene and the Blizzard tactics to now take every penny technique, which was taken from mobile users' weakness, and business sees weakness. So therefore, the mobile has caused the snowfall for poor gambling production with buy this, buy that attitude. The mobile's use of manipulation of its users all day long and does nothing. I blame the mobile and its sick industry.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of that leaked into, because it worked, it leaked into every other platform. To Cal, not now, no more nervousness about the length of your weekly bomb. Yeah, normally, like, if it's long, I'll read it all, but I'm gonna excise a point or two to bring to the show. But some of these were making such a very specific point that if I excised it, it didn't make their point anymore, and I didn't want to, misconstrue anybody or misrepresent anybody. Just Sumi says GTA Online has been a while. Wait, was this yours, Q, or mine?
Yours.
Mine. Just Sumi says GTA Online has been a wild ride. It's both possibly the best and the worst live service game. It's one of the, if not the most financially successful online games ever, loaded with tons of great content. But man, some of those updates have been seriously lacking in quality. And let's not even talk about how slow Rockstar is at actually fixing issues. Some even dating back to 2013. Shout out to Rainbow Six Siege. It's still going strong. Ubisoft probably never imagined it would become this good and successful. Oh, Ubisoft imagines all their games will be very, very good and successful. Yeah. And the key word there is imagine. Good and
successful games back in the day.
Yeah, the key word there is imagine. Don't you know they make quadruple A games? Just sue me.
Quadruple A.
Quadruple A. Go ahead, Q.
Mr. Let Me Play. RuneScape, old school RuneScape is a great live service model for content. Top 3 active MMO.
Can't argue. Like, no lies detected. No lies. Even if you don't like the game, got to respect what it does. Finish it off, Troy.
Terminus Tataros. Hard to say which live service game is the best one. I have not played all games or all live service games. You, Mike, said Rocket League. That may be true, but I played this game for maybe an hour or less. Can't really make up much of an opinion on this game.
Sure.
Have not played Helldivers 2, but I heard it's quite all right with the live service. My personal preference is probably Deep Rock Galactic. I would nominate Monster Hunter World, but I'm not sure if this is an LS game.
Yeah, I mean, you can do online and group content, but it's not generally, that's not the purpose of the game for most people, the Monster Hunter series. Helldivers is fantastic, by the way. Question of the week this week. What's the best innovation in MMOs through the years for you? And what do you wish that MMOs used to do in the past that they don't do anymore? What do you wish was still around? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget your weekly bomb. Bomb for something good, A-bomb for something bad in the world of gaming or just life in general. We'll be back next Friday with the podcast, and then we will be off March 22nd. I'll be in Las Vegas, so there will be no cast that day. Cast next week, not the week after. Until next week, Troy, where can everybody find you?
Hey, if I'm on your favorite social media platform, it is at Noob Fridge.
Cute.
Hanging out on Blue Sky at Miscreation.
I'm Mike Byrne. You can follow me personally right there at magicman1, but more importantly, follow at MMOBomb, and you'll know every time we're going live with a podcast, a stream, posting giveaways, first look videos, articles, interviews, and so much more. Stay safe. We'll see you on the servers.